Democrats can tell voters it's not so bad or that they're stupid and racist and we don't want their votes anyway, but this guy does.
This American carnage stops right here and stops right now.
Yeah, I'll keep the shit to shoe level. That is a powerful campaign theme when there's that feeling that things are descending into every man for himself lawlessness. New York was like that in the Son of Sam 70s. Only back then we had taxi driver. Now we have Uber driver.
Good morning. It's Wednesday, Wasden Wednesday, December the 6th, and this is The True Conservative. Welcome to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there. I'm Ron, your host, and the only true conservative in the United States today. So today, after the Serenity Prayer and the patriotic song of the day, we will have Military Shorts, Bishop Barron, the 33 Strategies of War, and SEAL Team 6. All that and more when I get back. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things I shouldn't change, the courage to change the things I should, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen. Thank you. And now, the military shorts.
The United States does have hypersonic missiles, but they are not yet operational. The U.S. military has been developing hypersonic weapons for decades, but they have faced a number of technical challenges. Hypersonic missiles are extremely complex to develop and build. They must be able to withstand the intense heat generated by their high speeds, and they must be able to maneuver effectively at Mach 5 or faster. The United States is continuing to develop hypersonic missile technology. The Pentagon's fiscal year 2023 budget request for hypersonic research is $4.7 billion, up from $3.8 billion in the fiscal year 2022 request. The development of hypersonic weapons is a race between the U.S., China, and Russia. All three countries are investing heavily in hypersonic weapons, and they are all close to fielding operational weapons. Hypersonic weapons are a significant threat to the U.S. because they are very difficult to intercept. They could be used to attack U.S. military bases, warships, and aircraft. Strangely, when Win Foster lost his right arm from the elbow down while flying over North Vietnam, he felt no pain. In fact, as the 57mm shell blasted through his fuselage and tore open the canopy, all he felt was a stinging sensation. It wasn't until he looked down and saw that his right forearm had been completely severed from the rest of his right arm that he realized just how much trouble he was in. Knowing that time was of the essence, Foster broadcast Mayday and headed straight for the closest friendly, a SAR destroyer about 30 miles out in the Gulf of Tonkin. Losing both blood and fuel and feeling more and more lightheaded by the second, Foster held on until he descended through the undercast and caught sight of the destroyer. Then he ejected. While parachuting down and struggling to inflate his life vest, he had just enough time to admire the view of the ocean and sky before he crashed into the water. Then he felt himself being lifted into a whaleboat. Despite losing his arm, he had survived. Why did this legendary fighter ace blow up a crocodile? Major Dick Bong was not only a flying ace, he was known as the Ace of Aces for racking up an incredible 40 aerial kills while fighting the Japanese in World War II. But according to newspaper reports, the legendary pilot also once killed a crocodile while flying in his P-38. You see, a fellow pilot had gone down deep in the jungles of Papua New Guinea, and 3 airmen had gone in after him. but the thick vegetation meant they could only reach the downed pilot by crossing a lake in a small, collapsible boat. Just as the fragile boat was making its way across the water, what looked like a large log suddenly appeared behind it. But this was no log. It was a giant crocodile that had slipped into the water and was now trailing the rescuers. Major Bong spotted the croc from his P-38, and swooping down close to the water, he destroyed it with a burst of 20-millimeter fire. At least, that's what the newspapers reported.
In the late 1950s, did you know Russia tried to build an aircraft that could easily destroy U.S. cities? Let me explain. In 1957, the Soviet Union came up with a revolutionary new type of aircraft, the DSBLK Dark Star. The Dark Star was to be a hypersonic strategic bomber with a very futuristic design and capabilities. The jet was to be powered by 6 turbojets, each capable of producing over 25,000-pound force, enabling the aircraft to reach speeds above Mach 4 and altitudes above 60,000 feet. It was also designed to carry hypersonic cruise missiles, unguided drop bombs, and air-to-air missiles. However, the DSBLK never exceeded drawing board.
It's just released video of a blazing shootout between cops and a gunman inside a bank. Inside the building, it was a nightmare scenario. A madman opening fire and killing people at random. You can see the muzzle flashes as he keeps firing.
We need multiple medic units. We have 3 confirmed victims down inside of the ground floor.
Police race to the bank. Cops warily close in. And that's when all hell breaks loose. The shooter, identified as Omar Santa Perez, was taken down. 3 victims lost their lives. Incredibly, this bank employee survived being shot 12 times. Cops say the shooter had 250 rounds in his bag before his rampage at the Cincinnati bank came to a stunning end.
Aerial refueling always involves some risk, and when things go wrong, you never know what might happen. But while some accidents can lead to deadly crashes, a 2002 refueling incident led to one F-18 pilot landing with a basket on his nose. You see, the F-18 pilot was refueling during a combat mission as part of Operation Enduring Freedom when the KC-10's basket became detached, shattering the F-18's canopy. The pilot was suddenly exposed to severe wind blast of up to 250 miles per hour, icy temperatures that reached negative 40 degrees Fahrenheit, and a loss of oxygen. Plus, a 10-foot-long section of the hose that was still attached to the basket whipped around, slapping against the damaged F-18. The pilot kept his cool, however, and diverted to a nearby airfield while his wingman kept a lookout for ground threats. When a rescue crew examined the F-18, which still had the basket attached, they were impressed that the pilot hadn't ejected. Just 24 hours later, the F-18 was back up in the air, ready for another mission.
Helicopter piloting is a hazardous job, so the equipment is designed to provide maximum protection for the pilot.
The helicopter carries 2 to 3 tons of fuel, which can ignite instantly in the event of an accident. That's why my gear starts with an American Army Aviation pilot's jumpsuit, known for its fire resistance. The underwear, socks, footwear, balaclava, and shirt are also flame resistant, ensuring comprehensive protection. Additional personal protective equipment includes a bulletproof vest and a first aid kit. As for personal weapons, I carry a Makarov pistol and a shortened Kalashnikov. The helmet, the American HGU-56/P, is also a crucial part of the equipment and arguably the best helicopter helmet. It provides both ballistic protection and safeguards against head impacts. The helmet features attachments for night vision goggles and a visor that protects against debris.
October 1961. The Soviet Union dropped the most powerful nuclear bomb. The resulting damage was more than 160 kilometers away. The flash from the blast could be seen from 1,000 kilometers away. This is the world's largest nuclear device ever created and tested. The Tsar Bomba, the emperor of the bombs. That produced a mushroom cloud more than 60 kilometers high, and buildings more than 160 kilometers away were reportedly damaged. In addition, it was estimated that heat from the blast would have caused third-degree burns up to 100 kilometers distant. Despite its incredible destructive power, the Tsar Bomba was never actually used in combat. It was designed as a warning to the West during the Cold War and served its purpose well.
Well, this is a German-supplied Gepard air defense system. Ukraine has dozens. It has 2 cannons on top, as you can see there. They can fire 1,100 rounds every single minute. It uses radar and laser technology to lock onto targets, typically those Russian explosive attack drones and cruise missiles, and then it can effectively shoot them down. And you can see on the side they've inscribed how many times they've shot down Russian drones and missiles. They're protecting strategic sites across Ukraine.
This satellite image of a Russian naval shipyard gives us clues about what Russia is doing in the Black Sea. This right here is the Sparta 4. It's a Russian cargo ship that's been sanctioned by the U.S. Experts say that on both the ship and the dock are artillery weapons based on their dimensions. That's a big deal because it's possible evidence that Russia is using civilian cargo ships to transport weapons, something it has essentially accused Ukraine of doing. Over here are 2 Russian diesel-powered submarines, which show how Russia is maintaining firepower in the Black Sea. The satellite image was taken on the same day that Russia conducted exercises in the sea and just days after Moscow pulled out of the Ukraine grain deal and said that it would treat all ships traveling to Ukrainian ports as carrying military cargo.
We've had information to suggest that they may be preparing a false flag operation.
Now, analysts say the risk of war spilling into the Black Sea is higher than at any point since the invasion began.
And that was the military shorts. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, Bishop Robert Barron.
What burdens us? What's the burden of life? It's this old lie that we will become happy if we just get enough of the goods of the world. If we can just draw enough into ourselves and hang on to it, then I'll be happy. I will not be happy. On the contrary. What do we all want? Well, this lovely word here, rest, it doesn't mean like lying in a hammock. It means fulfillment. It means peace. It means the joy that we all want. How do you get it? You get it by imitating the rhythms and dynamics of the divine life. Come to me, the Lord says. All you who are burdened by this lie you've been told, and in me you'll find rest.
And that was Bishop Robert Barron. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the 33 strategies of war. Declare war on your enemies.
By Carl Schmitt. Political thought and political instinct prove themselves theoretically and practically in the ability to distinguish friend and enemy. The high points of politics are simultaneously the moments in which the enemy is, in concrete clarity, recognized as the enemy. By Friedrich Nietzsche. I am by nature warlike. To attack is among my instincts. To be able to be an enemy, that presupposes a strong nature. It is in any event a condition of every strong nature. It needs resistances. Consequently, it seeks resistances. The strength of one who attacks has in the opposition he needs a kind of gauge. Every growth reveals itself in the seeking out of a powerful opponent or problem. For a philosopher who is warlike also challenges problems to a duel. The undertaking is to master not any resistances that happen to present themselves, but those against which one has to bring all one's strength, suppleness, and mastery of weapons. To master equal opponents. From The Persistence of Memory, a biography of Dali, by Meredith Etherington Smith. Salvador Dali had no time for those who did not agree with his principles, and took the war into the enemy camp by writing insulting letters to many of the friends he had made in the Residencia, calling them pigs. He happily compared himself to a clever bull, avoiding the cowboys, and generally had a great deal of fun stirring up and scandalizing almost every Catalan intellectual worthy of the name. Dalí was beginning to burn his bridges with the zeal of an arsonist. We, Dalí and the filmmaker Luis Buñuel, had resolved to send a poisoned pen letter to one of the great celebrities of Spain. Dalí later told his biographer Alain Bousquet, "Our goal was pure subversion." Both of us were strongly influenced by Nietzsche. We hit upon two names, Manuel de Falla, the composer, and Juan Ramón Jiménez, the poet. We drew straws and Jiménez won. So we composed a frenzied and nasty letter of incomparable violence and addressed it to Juan Ramón Jiménez. It read, "Our distinguished friend, we believe it is our duty to inform you, disinterestedly, that your work is deeply repugnant to us because of its immorality, its hysteria, its arbitrary quality." It caused Jiménez great pain. By Georg Simmel. The opposition of a member to an associate is no purely negative social factor, if only because such opposition is often the only means for making life with actually unbearable people at least possible. If we did not even have the power and the right to rebel against tyranny, arbitrariness, moodiness, tactlessness, we could not bear to have any relation to people from whose characters we thus suffer. We would feel pushed to take desperate steps, and these indeed would end the relation, but do not perhaps constitute conflict. Not only because of the fact that oppression usually increases if it is suffered calmly and without protest, but also because opposition gives us inner satisfaction, distraction, relief. Our opposition makes us feel that we are not completely victims of the circumstances. By William McDougall. As one travels up any one of the large rivers of Borneo, one meets with tribes that are successively more warlike. In the coast regions are peaceful communities which never fight save in self-defense, and then with but poor success. Whereas in the central regions, where the rivers take their rise, are a number of extremely warlike tribes whose raids have been a constant source of terror to the communities settled in the lower reaches of the rivers. It might be supposed that the peaceful coast people would be found to be superior in moral qualities to their more warlike neighbors, but the contrary is the case. In almost all respects, the advantage lies with the warlike tribes. Their houses are better built, larger, and cleaner. Their domestic morality is superior. They are physically stronger, are braver, and physically and mentally more active, and in general are more trustworthy. But above all, their social organization is firmer and more efficient, because their respect for and obedience to their chiefs and their loyalty to their community are much greater. Each man identifies himself with the whole community, and accepts and loyally performs the social duties laid upon him. By Georg Hegel. Man exists only insofar as he is opposed. And lastly, from My Bondage and My Freedom, by Frederick Douglass. The frequent hearing of my mistress reading the Bible, for she often read aloud when her husband was absent, soon awakened my curiosity in respect to this mystery of reading, and roused in me the desire to learn. Having no fear of my kind mistress before my eyes, she had given me no reason to fear, I frankly asked her to teach me to read. And without hesitation, the dear woman began the task, and very soon, by her assistance, I was master of the alphabet, and could spell words of 3 or 4 letters. Master Hugh was amazed at the simplicity of his spouse, and probably for the first time, he unfolded to her the true philosophy of slavery, and the peculiar rules necessary to be observed by masters and mistresses in the management of their human chattels. Mr. Auld promptly forbade the continuance of her reading instruction, telling her, in the first place, that the thing itself was unlawful, that it was also unsafe, and could only lead to mischief. Mrs. Auld evidently felt the force of his remarks, and, like an obedient wife, began to shape her course in the direction indicated by her husband. The effect of his words on me was neither slight nor transitory. His iron sentences, cold and harsh, sunk deep into my heart, and stirred up not only my feelings into a sort of rebellion, but awakened within me a slumbering train of vital thought. It was a new and special revelation, dispelling a painful mystery against which my youthful understanding had struggled, and struggled in vain, to wit, the white man's power to perpetuate the enslavement of the black man. Very well, thought I, knowledge unfits a child to be a slave. I instinctively assented to the proposition, and from that moment I understood the direct pathway from slavery to freedom. This was just what I needed, and got it at a time and from a source whence I least expected it. Wise as Mr. Auld was, he evidently underrated my comprehension, and had little idea of the use to which I was capable of putting the impressive lesson he was giving to his wife. That which he most loved, I most hated, and the very determination which he expressed to keep me in ignorance only rendered me the more resolute in seeking intelligence.
And that was the end of Chapter 1, Declare War on Your Enemies, from the 33 Strategies of War. Back in a minute. Thank you. And now, the next chapter, Chapter 14, From the Ashes of SEAL Team 6.
14. From the Ashes. The sun had disappeared when medical personnel whisked me away to the Swedish field hospital. The thought sank in that I might lose my leg. I was scared. At the hospital, a nurse gave me a shot of morphine. It didn't take effect. Turned out I was in the 1% of people whose receptor for morphine doesn't make the pain go away. The nurse gave me another shot. My legs still hurt like hell. They debrided my wounds, removing damaged, infected, and dead tissue to help me heal. Then they prepared me for transportation to Germany. The medical personnel loaded us onto a plane. Inside the impressive aircraft, it looked like a hospital with wings. Beds, IV units, machines. A nurse walked by me. I reached out and grabbed her leg. "I'm hurting so bad. Can you please just give me something?" She looked at my medical chart. "You've had 2 shots of morphine. You can't be feeling pain." Then she walked away to see another patient. A little while later, a doctor came by and saw me. This was bone pain, the worst kind of pain. With a cut, the body compensates by constricting arteries to decrease blood flow to the area in order to prevent bleeding to death. With a bone injury, the body can't compensate. My pale body shook and sweat poured out of me as I clenched my teeth, trying to will the pain not to consume me. Calm your pulse down. Slow your breathing. Block the pain. Will it away. I could do it as a kid. Why isn't it working yet? I could do it as a kid. Why can't I do it now? It was the same principle I used when I was getting my ass beat as a child. Remove myself from the pain and not become physically involved. Self-preservation mode. I couldn't stop the physical symptoms of paleness, shaking, and sweat, so I tried to control how my mind coped with the pain. "This man is in pain," the doctor said. "No kidding, I've been trying to tell you all." He gave me a shot of Demerol. "How's that?" I felt almost instant relief. "Thank you so much." The doctor spoke with the nurse. Then she came over and apologized. "I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I didn't know." She was almost in tears. Will I lose my leg? We landed at the Ramstein Air Base in Germany. Air Force personnel loaded us onto a bus. The Air Force guys were cheerful and helpful. "We heard you guys kicked ass. We're going to take good care of you." They pumped up our spirits. Upon my arrival at the Army's Landstuhl Regional Medical Center, the largest American hospital outside of the United States, the doctors took me straight to surgery. In the operating room, they prepped me. A nurse tried to give me a general anesthetic. I don't want to go to sleep, I said. We need to put you to sleep for the surgery, she reasoned with me. I don't want to go to sleep. I know you're going to take my leg off. She and a male nurse tried to hold me down, but I fought them off. The situation was pretty intense when the surgeon came in. What's going on? The patient is resisting, the nurse explained. He won't let us administer the general anesthetic. The surgeon looked at me. What's the problem? I'm just afraid you're going to take my leg if you put me to sleep. I don't want to go to sleep. Please. The surgeon told the nurse, give him an epidural. She gave me the shot in my lower back, used for women giving childbirth. It deadened everything in me from the waist down. The surgeon took my arm and looked into my eyes. I may be the best orthopedic surgeon in the Air Force. I'll save your leg. He may have been BSing me, but he seemed sincere, and I felt reassured. The doctor performed surgery on me as I watched. When I realized they weren't going to take my leg off, I fell asleep. Later, I awoke to pain on my right thigh. The epidural had started to wear off. The surgeon had an instrument he used to scrape grafts of skin off my thigh. He put the grafts through a machine that looked like a cheese grater, which he used to punch holes in the skin to make it bigger. Then he stapled the skin onto the site where they'd performed the surgery. Gradually, I started to feel some pain. When they did the next skin graft, I flinched. If it had been the Vietnam era, the doctors would have amputated. Due to advances in modern medicine and a great surgeon, I was able to keep my leg. After the surgery, they carted me off to my room. The nurse hooked up an electrical pump to my bed. If you're in pain, just hit this button here. You can't overdo it, but when you're in pain, just give yourself a dose. Cool. I hit the button a couple of times and went to sleep. Waking up, I had no concept of time. A voice cried out, "Damn, it hurts! Damn, it hurts!" A nurse's voice said, "Just hold on. We're trying to find a pump." I looked over. He was the brave ranger who'd been shot in the leg once, shoulder twice, and arm once, and still fed me ammo during the Battle of Mogadishu. Some time had passed, and the nurse still hadn't brought his pump. The hospital was not quite prepared for the mass casualties they now had on their hands. The ranger continued to cry out. I called him by name. He looked over at me. "Hua, Sarnt." The ranger's abbreviated sergeant to Sarnt, and as a Navy Petty Officer First Class, my rank was equivalent to an Army Staff Sergeant. A mop leaned against the wall near my bed. I reached over, grabbed it, and extended the handle to him. "Grab this." He took hold of the mop handle. "Let's pull our beds together," I said. We pulled until the wheels under our beds rolled. With our beds together, I took the needle of my catheter out and stuck it in the ranger's catheter, then hit the button a couple of times. Having expended most of my strength, I couldn't push the beds back apart. Both of us became sleepy. When the nurse returned, she went ballistic. "What happened to your beds? What's going on? Why are you giving him that medicine? If he was allergic to that, you could have killed him." She took the needle out of his catheter and put it back in mine. A full bird colonel must have heard all the commotion. He came in. The nurse chattered about what happened. The colonel looked at me. "Well, soldier, do you think you run the hospital?" I explained. "We were just in an intense firefight. He was hurting. I made him quit hurting. Shoot me if you want to." The edges of the colonel's lips rose in a slight smile. He took the nurse to the end of the room. "These guys are trained to take care of each other. Just let it go this time." The nurse had her back to me as the colonel turned and gave me a wink. Then he walked out of the room. The next day I noticed my scalp itching terribly. I scratched it. Black stuff accumulated under my fingernails. During the battle, a ranger I had carried back to the Humvee had bled on me. The black stuff on my scalp was his dried blood. Uncle Earl from my wife's family happened to be in Germany visiting one of his companies. He heard where I was and came to visit. When he saw me, he just stared for a moment. Then he walked out and went high-order detonation on the staff. Wasden is lying in his own urine. I hadn't realized it at the time, but after my epidural, I lost bladder control. His body is filthy. The hospital staff tried to calm him. He wouldn't calm down. I want him cleaned up right now. I want some fresh clothes on him, and I want some fresh linen on that bed. Wash the blood out of his hair. Get in there and brush his teeth. You better take care of him immediately, or I'm calling somebody in Washington right now, and I'm going to rain down hell on this hospital. Maybe the hospital staff had been too busy due to the sudden flood of us coming in to perform the regular patient care. Whatever the reason, within minutes, an attendant washed my hair. I felt like I was in heaven. The assistant gave me a toothbrush, and I brushed my teeth. Also, the assistant took the linen off my bed, and even though the mattress had a plastic cover on it, flipped it over. They gave me a fresh gown. I felt so much better. Uncle Earl brought in a wheelchair. Anything I can do for you? Yes, get me out of this hospital gown. He helped me into the wheelchair and rolled me to the gift shop where he bought me a pair of sweatpants, a sweatshirt, a ball cap, and a teddy bear. Uncle Earl asked the cashier, "Could you cut these sweatpants off at the knee for us?" She looked at him, puzzled, for a moment, then looked at me. "Sure," she said sweetly. The cashier pulled out a pair of scissors and cut the sweatpants. She handed them to Earl. "Thank you." Earl wheeled me into the gift shop restroom and put the sweatpants on over my external fixator. The surgeon had drilled holes into the uninjured part of my bone near the fracture, then he screwed pins into the bone. Outside my leg, a metal rod attached to the pins to hold them in place. The pins and rod made up the external fixator. Then, Earl put the sweatshirt and cap on me. He wheeled me out of the restroom and over to the cafeteria and picked up some Hefeweizen beers, traditional German unfiltered wheat beers that have less bitterness and more carbonation than the filtered variety. "What do you want to do?" he asked. "Can you roll me out in the courtyard for some sunshine?" He pushed me out there, and we had our drinks. Cleaned up with fresh clothes and drinking beer in the sunshine, I thought, this is pretty good. I drank half my beer and fell asleep. Later, I would give the teddy bear to my 3-year-old sweetheart, Rachel. The next day, a Delta guy from across the hall who had an injured shoulder came and visited me. We talked about the battle. He said, "I didn't have a good appreciation for you guys since you weren't actually part of our team, but you guys kicked ass. We had no idea SEALs could throw down like that. You especially. I saw you 2 or 3 times during that firefight. Wish I had more to do with you before the firefight." "It's cool," I said. "Hey, Brad is down the hall. Want to go see him?" "Sure." He wheeled me over to see Brad, one of the Delta snipers. I saw Brad's amputated leg, sheared off when an RPG hit his helo. He shook my hand. "Want a dip?" he said, as if everything were normal. He extended his hand and held out a fiberboard can of moist dipping tobacco, Copenhagen. Hell yeah. I pinched some and put it in my mouth. The 3 of us sat talking and spitting. "Hey, they were able to save your leg," Brad said. "I was told that if it had been a 1/4 of an inch more, they would have had to amputate. Brad is taking this way better than I am, and his leg is cut off. Here I am feeling sorry for myself, angry at the world and God. Here he is with no leg and a positive attitude." Seeing Brad was good therapy for me. Brad was a sniper on Black Hawk Super 6-2. Along with him were Delta snipers Gary Gordon and Randy Shughart. They flew over the second downed helo and saw the pilot, Mike Durant, moving. Somali crowds closed in. With no friendlies on the ground to help, Mike was all alone. The 3 snipers and their door gunners fired at the mob. Brad, Gordon, and Shughart looked at each other. They nodded. Gordon told the pilot, "Insert the 3 of us to assist Super 6-4. The pilot radioed headquarters. 3 operators request permission to secure Super 6-4, over. "Negative. There are too many unfriendlies down there. Can't risk another bird." When one door gunner got shot, Brad took over the minigun. Everyone needed the big gun in the fight to keep the enemy from shooting them down. The crowd on the ground grew, moving closer to Mike's crashed helo. 2 of us are going in, Gordon said. Put us down. The pilot radioed again. 2 operators request a secure crash site until rescue arrives. Negative, Gordon insisted. The pilot lowered the helo to the crash site. Brad stayed on the minigun of the Black Hawk and covered Gordon and Shughart as they fast-roped down. On the ground, the 2 snipers calmly moved Mike and the other crew members to a more secure location with good fields of fire. Then Gordon and Shughart took up defensive positions on opposite sides of the helo, coolly shooting the enemy in the upper torso one by one, Gordon with his Car-15 and Shughart with his M14. Suddenly Gordon said, matter-of-factly, like he'd bumped his knee into a table, "Damn, I'm hit." Then he stopped shooting. Shughart retrieved Gordon's Car-15 and gave it to Mike. Shughart resumed fighting. When Shughart's rifle ran out of ammo, he returned to the downed helo and made a radio call. He walked around the front of the helicopter and charged at the crowd, firing point blank with his pistol, pushing them back until he ran out of ammo. The mob fought back, killing Shughart. Enemy corpses lay scattered on the ground surrounding the fallen snipers. Shughart and Gordon were bad in the best sense of the word. The crowd got their revenge by dragging the dead soldiers' bodies through the streets and cutting them up. They captured Mike and held him hostage, hoping to use him for a prisoner exchange. He was released later. The military's highest award, the Medal of Honor, would go to the 2 Delta snipers, Gary Gordon and Randy Shughart. One day, General Henry Hugh Shelton, Commander-in-Chief of U.S. Special Operations Command, visited my hospital room. He presented me with my Purple Heart and gave me his commander's coin. His sincerity, caring, and encouragement lifted my spirits. "Is the hospital taking good care of you?" he asked. "Yes, sir." General Shelton asked how well the Rangers fought during the Battle of Mogadishu. "They fought bravely, sir." I thought for a moment. "We're not going to leave this unfinished, are we?" "No, we're going to get the tanks and go in and do the job right." Although I'm sure he meant it, the White House never allowed that to happen. I stayed in Landstuhl Regional Medical Center for a week before they flew me and others to Andrews Air Force Base, Maryland. As they wheeled me off the plane on a gurney, Laura and the kids met me. 8-year-old Blake ran to my side and put his arms around my chest. Laura was pregnant. She held 3-year-old Rachel, who was too young to understand much about what was going on. After staying overnight in Maryland, I was taken to the team compound in Damnick. I told them I wanted to rehab down at Fort Stewart Army Hospital in Georgia, the same place Blake was born, 30 minutes away from my home. The team gave me a special lightweight wheelchair made of composite metal that I heard cost thousands of dollars. My 2 children, my wife and I lived with her parents in Odom, Georgia during my rehabilitation. When I heard the Delta would be having a memorial service, I wanted to go. The military flew down a C-12, a small passenger plane, to pick me up at Hunter Army Airfield in Savannah. I flew up to the memorial ceremony at the Delta compound in Fort Bragg. Greeting me at the airport in SUVs were Tim Wilkinson and Scotty, the PJs, and Dan Schilling, the CCT. It felt good to see old friends from that hangar in Somalia. Even though they were Air Force, we had fought in Mogadishu together, which made me closer to them than to my SEAL Team 6 teammates who hadn't been with me in combat. The Air Force would award Tim the military's second highest honor, the Air Force Cross, equal to the Navy Cross for Navy, Marine Corps, and Coast Guard, Distinguished Service Cross for Army. Scotty would receive the Silver Star, the military's third highest honor. Dan received its next highest honor, the Bronze Star. They wheeled me past a wall where the names of the fallen Delta Force guys were written. I saw 6 pairs of desert combat boots, 6 M16 rifles with bayonets stuck downward in the base of the display, 6 bayonets on the rifle butts, and a picture for each of the 6 men. Dan Bush, Earl Fillmore, Randy Shughart, Gary Gordon, Tim Grizz Martin, and Matt Ryerson, I remembered Grizz, who had a big birthmark on his face, a prankster who came up with new and exotic ways to blow stuff up. During the memorial service in the auditorium, the chaplain led everyone in prayer for the fallen men. Wives wept. Dan Bush's parents looked devastated. Dan was only 25 years old, incredibly young to be a Delta sniper, from Portage, Wisconsin, squared away, a devout Christian. I never heard him say a cuss word, rare in the special operations community. I remember one day after lunch, we oiled up with suntan lotion and basked in the sun on top of a Connex box outside of the hangar at Mogadishu. Of the little free time we had, I spent much of it with Dan Bush. A sergeant read the last roll call. Each man in the unit answered, "Here," except for the fallen men. The honor guard fired 3 volleys. A bugler played taps. In our profession, we knew it was a possibility when we took the job. Still, looking at their parents, wives, and kids really hit me hard. These guys are really gone. Dan is gone. How come I get to live and they don't? Dan Bush was a much better person and Christian than I was. Why is he dead and I'm still here? I felt guilty that I'd survived. After the memorial, when Scotty, Tim, and I were hanging out, a Delta guy asked who I was. They didn't recognize me in my beard. I had been too weak to shave. Scotty and Tim told him who I was. Oh, hell. The Delta operator went to the other Delta guys and said, "Hey, Wasden is here." They swarmed me, took me to Delta's Charlie Squadron ready room and gave me beers in both hands. We hung out and they laughed when I told them about giving my medication to the ranger at Landstuhl. Afterward, Delta had a party, but I had a fever and didn't have enough power in my engine to join them. I went back to my hotel room early. Only Defense Secretary Les Aspin attended the memorial service. For the most part, the Clinton administration seemed to hope the Battle of Mogadishu would just conveniently disappear and America would forget. After flying out the next morning to Georgia, I showed up at the hospital for my regular visit. I had diarrhea. My fever had worsened. My whole body ached like it was on fire. I felt disoriented. I was literally dying. The medical team descended on me and rushed me into the back, gave me a shot in each butt cheek, and put an IV in each arm. They removed the bandages from my leg and started working on it. The doctor, who had gone home, returned in his civilian clothes. "Where have you been?" he asked. "We've been trying to contact your house, but you weren't there. The blood test results from your previous visit showed that you have a staph infection." The deadly staph infection had crawled deep inside me via the pins in my leg. This partly explains why I didn't feel up to attending the party with Delta after the memorial.
And that's part 1 of Chapter 14, From the Ashes, from SEAL Team 6. Back in a minute. Thank you. This is Ron, your host, the only true conservative in the United States. Today, bidding adios to all the butchers, bakers, and candlestick makers out there, and reminding you to be honest, smart, and beautiful, and remember that the left has no authority, no power, and they can't win.